Normally, I'm not someone who visits museums very often or spends much time in them, but this one really surprised me. I ended up staying here for about 3 to 4 hours, and it sparked an even greater interest in Korean history.
You can learn so much about the history of the Korean War, the background. I can really recommend it.
It's weird to think that even though the war happened decades ago, it technically still hasn't officially ended. Outside, there's a large yard displaying real tanks, aircraft, and other military equipment. Normally, you are supposed to order the meat you want and grill it yourself, but I think the waiter saw me sitting there alone, not speaking Korean, and probably looking a little confused, so he offered to cook it for me. Now that's service. At 555 meters tall and 123 floors, Lotte World Tower is the tallest building in South Korea and one of the tallest buildings in the world.
서울에서 4주를 보낸 외국인 여행자. 그런데 그가 가장 강하게 반응한 것은 화려한 쇼핑이나 카페가 아니었습니다. 한국전쟁의 역사, 실제 군사 장비, 혼자 온 손님까지 챙겨주는 식당 서비스, 그리고 123층까지 올라가는 서울의 도시 스케일. 과연 그는 서울에서 무엇을 보고 예상보다 훨씬 더 놀라웠다고 말했을까요?
구독과 좋아요는 여러분의 사랑입니다.
외국인이 서울에 오면 무엇에 가장 놀랄까요? 음식, K-팝, 쇼핑도 있지만 가장 강하게 들어오는 장면은 따로 있습니다. 역사를 기억하는 공간, 도시를 움직이는 교통 시스템, 유리창 없이 내려다보는 서울 전망, 혼자 온 손님까지 챙기는 식당 서비스, 그리고 도심 한가운데 남아있는 왕궁. 오늘은 한 외국인이 4주 동안 서울에서 발견한 한국의 진짜 힘을 따라가 보겠습니다.
I spent 4 weeks in Seoul, but not as a tourist. I was here for work, working during the week and exploring whenever I could. No packed itinerary, no pressure to see everything, just taking the city in, one moment at a time. The more time I spent here, the less it felt like I was checking off sites on a list, and the more I found myself simply enjoying everyday life in the city. And somewhere along the way, it started to feel familiar.
이 영상의 시선이 특별한 이유는 여기에 있습니다. 그는 며칠짜리 관광객이 아니라 서울에서 4주 동안 일하며 생활했습니다. 그래서 유명 관광지만이 아니라 교통, 시장, 공원, 식당 서비스 같은 일상 속 한국을 더 자세히 보게 됩니다.
The first step to being able to move around Seoul freely was getting a transportation card. You can get one at any convenience store, such as GS25. They are called T-money cards. Just be aware that when topping them up, only cash is accepted. One of the first places I explored in Seoul was Myeongdong Market. But before heading out of the metro station, I came across this cool underground shopping mall that's worth checking out. You can find all kinds of clothing, accessories, and souvenirs here. Even though Myeongdong Market can be quite touristy and crowded, I'd still recommend it to anyone visiting Seoul. It's one of those places that's worth experiencing at least once. You can find plenty of delicious food, and it's simply fun to wander around.
서울 여행의 시작은 교통카드였습니다. 외국인에게 티머니는 단순한 카드가 아니라 서울을 자유롭게 움직이게 해주는 첫 번째 열쇠입니다. 그리고 지하철역 안에서 바로 이어지는 쇼핑몰과 명동시장. 한국 도시는 이동과 소비가 자연스럽게 연결되어 있습니다.
Another place I decided to check out was Namsan Tower. You can either hike up the hill or take the cable car. Of course, I decided to take the cable car and enjoy the view along the way. Just be aware that on weekends you may have to queue for a while. In my case, I ended up waiting about 40 minutes before I could get on. Once at the top, it's just a short walk to the tower itself. Namsan Tower is also called Seoul Tower. The tower itself doesn't look particularly spectacular, but it's the views and its location on top of Namsan Hill, about 262 meters above sea level, that make it so special. Instead of buying a ticket to go up the tower, I decided to go down instead, for free. The lower levels offer plenty of entertainment, including gaming areas, photo booths, and other attractions. I actually think the views from here are more charming than the ones you get from Lotte World Tower. Sure, Lotte World Tower is much higher, but you are mostly looking at the city through glass windows. Here, you are out in the open, with nothing between you and the city.
남산타워 장면은 서울의 스케일을 보여주기에 좋습니다. 40분을 기다릴 만큼 사람이 많고 꼭대기에서는 도시가 한눈에 내려다 보입니다. 특히 그는 유리창 없이 서울을 직접 마주하는 전망이 더 매력적이라고 말합니다.
Seoul is a city that never seems to stop moving. But behind the skyscrapers, busy streets, and neon lights lies a much more complex story. To better understand the city and the country that shaped it, I spent some time at the War Memorial of Korea, a place dedicated to remembering the sacrifices and events that made South Korea what it is today. Normally, I'm not someone who visits museums very often or spends much time in them, but this one really surprised me. I ended up staying here for about 3 to 4 hours, and it sparked an even greater interest in Korean history. It's weird to think that even though the war happened decades ago, it technically still hasn't officially ended.
I just finished my tour in the memorial. It took me 3 or 4 hours. You can learn so much about the history of the Korean War, the background. I can really recommend it.
Outside, there's a large yard displaying real tanks, aircraft, and other military equipment.
이 영상에서 시청자에게 가장 강하게 들어오는 장면입니다. 전쟁 기념관, 한국전쟁, 아직 끝나지 않은 전쟁, 그리고 실제 탱크와 항공기, 외국인이 단순히 보고 지나간 것이 아니라 새 4시간을 머물며 한국 역사에 더 큰 관심이 생겼다고 말합니다. 한국을 이해하는 데 이보다 강한 장면은 없습니다.
It was already 6 p.m., but I still wanted to explore the Gangnam district, and I was getting hungry, so I hopped on a bus and headed there. Being in Korea for several weeks started to make me curious about K-pop, so I took every chance I could to take a closer look. If you come to Gangnam, make sure to visit Starfield Library. With its cozy lighting and massive bookshelves, it's a special place not only for taking photos, but also for relaxing, learning, and if you speak Korean, reading a book. So no reading for me tonight. This is a fun spot if you like the song Gangnam Style. Come here, press the play button on the screen, and start dancing in front of the Gangnam Style statue.
전쟁 기념관의 무거운 장면 뒤에는 현대 서울의 얼굴을 보여줍니다. 강남 스타필드 도서관, K-팝 강남 스타일. 서울은 역사만 있는 도시도 아니고 쇼핑만 있는 도시도 아닙니다. 한국의 과거와 현재가 같은 하루 안에 이어집니다.
Insadong is known for its traditional tea houses, street food, art galleries, and handcrafted goods. But first, some side dishes arrived, which are usually included with your meal in Korea. I also ordered rice wine for the first time. Ikseondong became one of my favorite spots to explore in Seoul. You'll find traditional Korean houses, also called hanok, turned into trendy cafes, restaurants, and all kinds of small boutiques.
서울의 전통은 박물관 안에만 있지 않습니다. 인사동에서는 찻집과 수공예품으로, 익선동에서는 한옥 카페와 식당으로 다시 살아납니다. 외국인에게는 이 장면이 매우 신기합니다. 오래된 건물을 없애는 것이 아니라 새로운 방식으로 쓰고 있기 때문입니다.
Right in the heart of downtown Seoul, Cheonggyecheon offers a quiet escape from the city. What was once covered by a highway has been transformed into this peaceful stream and walking path.
청계천은 좋은 도시 인프라입니다. 과거의 도로가 지금은 물길과 산책로로 바뀌었습니다. 외국인의 눈에는 이것이 단순한 관광지가 아니라 도시를 다시 설계한 결과처럼 보입니다.
Back at the Avenue of Youth, night had fallen, the lights were on, and I was getting hungry. It was time to enjoy some Korean barbecue and a bottle of soju. Normally, you are supposed to order the meat you want and grill it yourself. But I think the waiter saw me sitting there alone, not speaking Korean, and probably looking a little confused. So he offered to cook it for me. Now that's service.
이 장면은 한국 음식보다 한국식 서비스를 보여주는 장면입니다. 외국인이 혼자 앉아있고 한국어도 못하고 조금 당황해 보이자 직원이 직접 고기를 구워줍니다. 그는 짧게 말합니다. 이게 서비스죠. 한국 식당의 정과 서비스가 외국인에게 강하게 남은 순간입니다.
The Hyundai Seoul is a department store I definitely recommend. You could easily spend the whole day here, which is pretty much what I ended up doing since it was raining outside. This is a booth where you can record your own ASMR. I'm not really into that, but I thought it was interesting that you can do something like this here.
서울의 쇼핑몰은 단순히 물건을 사는 공간이 아닙니다. 비가 오면 하루 종일 머물 수 있고 내부에는 휴식 공간과 체험 공간까지 있습니다. 자신만의 ASMR을 녹음하는 부스까지 발견한 그는 서울의 실내 공간이 생각보다 훨씬 다양하다고 느낍니다.
With the weather finally on my side, Seoul Botanic Park felt like the perfect place for a slower morning away from the crowds. The park brings together plants from around the world in one of the city's largest green spaces. As it turns out, one of the reasons there were so many people here was a concert taking place later that day at one of Korea's most famous venues, the KSPO Dome, where many major K-pop acts perform. Olympic Park was built for the 1988 Olympics, but today it's one of Seoul's most popular places to walk, cycle, and escape the city's fast pace. The park itself is enormous. At around 1.4 million square meters, it's one of the largest parks in Seoul. At 555 meters tall and 123 floors, Lotte World Tower is the tallest building in South Korea and one of the tallest buildings in the world. At 486 meters, this is the only place in Lotte World Tower where you can step outside and feel the wind. Even here, though, you are still looking at the city through glass. Lotte World Tower is connected to Lotte World Mall, but there's also a Lotte department store right next door. I definitely got confused at first. There are just so many malls in Seoul.
서울의 스케일은 숫자로도 보입니다. 1988년 올림픽을 위해 만든 140만 제곱미터의 공원, 555m 높이의 123층 타워, 그리고 몰과 백화점이 연결된 거대한 복합 공간. 외국인에게 서울은 작고 복잡한 도시가 아니라 생각보다 훨씬 크고 체계적인 도시로 다가옵니다.
What I like most about Bukchon is that it doesn't feel staged. It's a historic neighborhood, but it's also a place where people still live their everyday lives. Just be aware that access for tourists is restricted daily from 5 p.m. to 10 a.m. These gardens are part of the Gyeongbokgung Palace complex. If you are wearing a hanbok, which I wasn't, you can enter for free. Otherwise, the ticket is still quite inexpensive. Of Seoul's 5 royal palaces, Gyeongbokgung is the largest and most famous. Built in 1395, it served as the main palace of the Joseon dynasty, and remains one of the best places to get a glimpse of Korea's royal history.
서울의 마지막 강점은 전통입니다. 북촌은 관광용 세트가 아니라 실제 사람들이 살아가는 역사 동네이고, 경복궁은 1395년에 지어진 조선 왕조의 중심 궁궐입니다. 외국인의 눈에는 이 도시가 현대적이면서도 동시에 오래된 기억을 그대로 품고 있는 곳으로 보입니다.
And just like that, my time in Seoul was coming to an end. Before heading to the airport, I made one final stop at Hyundai Premium Outlet Gimpo. And with one final bibimbap before my flight, my 4 weeks in Seoul were coming to an end. This city surprised me in more ways than I expected. But as it turned out, I'd be back sooner than I thought.
4주 동안 서울에서 일하고 걷고, 먹고, 배우고, 이동했던 외국인. 그가 마지막에 남긴 말은 단순했습니다. 서울은 예상보다 훨씬 더 많은 면에서 그를 놀라게 했습니다. 한국인에게는 익숙한 교통, 역사, 식당 서비스, 공원, 궁궐, 쇼핑몰, 도시 스케일이 외국인에게는 다시 오고 싶은 이유가 된 것입니다. 오늘 반응들 중 가장 공감되는 게 뭐였는지 댓글로도 알려주세요. 다음 편은 더 충격적인 에피소드로 찾아올게요. 놓치지 않으려면 구독과 알림, 그리고 좋아요도 잊지 마세요. 다음 영상에서 만나요.